Hello everybody, it's your good friend and neighbour Old Fowley. Welcome to the second part of my hastily cobbled together autobiography of my not especially large, not especially interesting, not particularly strategically curated and in no way well looked after record collection. While I'm hardly accumulating at a stupendous rate, I tend to be hunting more with a rifle than a shotgun, there are still some interesting and in one case quite odd finds. So let's get down to it. Let's begin with a band that's a little hard to find in the wild here in Australia, the fantastic Ramones. So imagine my surprise while in the midst of a particularly depressing and dreary and mundane shuffle through a crate of records, I came across a copy of their second album, Leave Home. I mean, to be brutally honest, this one is a bit of a dip between their groundbreaking debut and their revelatory third album, Rocket to Russia, but boy howdy, it's got Gimme Gimme Shock Treatment, Oh I Love Her So, You're Gonna Kill That Girl, and their masterpiece Carbona Not Glue on it. So there is no way this was not going in the bag. Speaking of those things, American, Star Spangled and apple pie ingesting, another band that is rather hard to come by down here are the DBs, a band that I thought, well, like their sonic cousins, the Young Fresh Fellows, from the Pacific Northwest, but turns out they're actually from the Atlantic Southeast, North Carolina to be exact, I do believe. This here is their album, The Sound of Music, and I would describe them as being a power pop band, inheritors of their great tradition of Badfinger, the Raspberries, Todd Rundgren, Cheap Trick, and succeeded later by bands like the Posies or Fountains of Wayne. This album here is from 1987. The highlight is the track Changed with the Changing Times, which has a Birdsey, Jeff Beck and the Yardbirdsy, The Who and Pete Townsend still remember how to write classic pop singles vibe to it. It's a very enjoyable record. From time to time, my darling wife will drag me to weekend markets where she'll root through similar-looking mounds of similar-looking junk while I smile understandingly all the time looking for a vendor selling German sausage. A fortnight or so back, she took me to the markets at Petrie, which may or may not be in the extreme north of Brisbane or in the extreme south of Moreton Bay. These things are uncertain. Anyway, the market was full of hippie shit. Total washout for the foul queen, but it did have a record store where I managed to find this, a mono copy of Scott Walker's debut album from 1967. Now, of course, I adore Scott Walker, and Mick from A Perfect Prescription and I were back and forthing a few weeks back over whether this was the best of Walker's early albums, or, as I argued, Scott 3 or 4. But the more I listen to this, I'm beginning to think that Mick was probably right. Matilda, Montague Terrace in Blue, Such a Very Small Love, and When Joanna Loved Me are perfect showcases for Walker's dramatic vocals and his really eclectic music stylings. This was a very much celebrated find for an artist who's at the very apex of my favourite artist pyramid. Aha! Now here's a good one. A good album with a sad story. One of the great tragedies of the 1970s was a fellow called Emitt Rhodes, a phenomenally talented young man from Hawthorne in California, which is the same neighbourhood that bred the Beach Boys. Rhodes played all of the instruments on his records, and he recorded them in his studio that he'd built for himself in his parents' garage. He wrote phenomenal pop songs and sounded remarkably like Paul McCartney vocally. The tragedy of Rhodes was that he signed very possibly the worst record deal ever with ABC Dunhill Records. Basically, they wanted him to slam out 2 records a year, but for a guy with his particular workflow and his particular methods and perfectionism, that was just an impossible task to achieve. He did manage 4 in 3 years, but eventually he just fell off the pace, and ABC Dunhill sued him. They took all the music he'd recorded, they took all of his publishing rights, and they took all of his royalties. So, understandably, Rhodes rage quit the music business and didn't come back again until 43 years later, and then promptly died after that. This is his debut album from 1970, Emitt Rhodes, and I've been looking for it for a long, long time. Very scarce to find on the wild here in Australia, but when I did find it, I jumped up and down 3 times and shouted hallelujah. I, of course, have been a fan of this record for years. The most obvious comparison point for someone looking in on it would be McCartney's Ram album. He does have a remarkably Macker-esque voice and bass playing, but this has better and more fully formed songs than Ram. The singles, Face on the Floor, Live Till You Die and Fresh as a Daisy, are remarkable little statements of perfect, fresh, early 70s pop. And if you like that like I do, and I know a lot of you do because I get the comments on the Past as a Foreign Country, this is a record I would recommend highly for you. It's time to get a bit meta and a bit self-referential here. A few weeks back I made a song about Mike on his Push to a Quadrillion video series. A big inspiration for that song was this album, which I found in a checkout bin for $10. Bill's Bag is of a cool and groovy nature, and it's a set by the Billy May Orchestra from the mid-1960s. Who, you might ask, is Billy May?
Who is Billy May?
Well, he was one of Sinatra's go-to guys in the 1950s and the 1960s. When Sinatra wanted sophisticated pop, he went to Nelson Riddle. When he wanted thoughtful ballads, he went to Gordon Jenkins. And when he wanted the hard, brassy, ring-a-ding-ding type stuff, he called on Billy May. That's Billy May playing na-na-na-na-na-na-na Batman theme on the 60s TV show. So you do know him in a way. This is an album full of stuff just like that. So if you're having a swinging Saturday night soiree at your sophisticated bachelor pad with all your urban sophisticate friends and their classy brides, then this is the perfect soundtrack for just such an occasion. You may recall in a previous video that I reported the surprising news of having bought a prog album which I didn't hate. So emboldened by that experience, I thought to myself, why not get another one? So I did. And I went out this time and got an album by a band that you guys all rave about, Genesis. And it was this one, Selling England by the Pound. Look at that whimsical cover. It's on Charisma Records. It's got 10-minute plus long songs. It's got nights, ordeals and battles. What could go wrong? Well, nothing really, but then nothing really goes right with it either. It's just such a tepid record. It's just, meh. It just wanders by. I couldn't engage with it on any level. It wasn't horrible. It just slipped totally into the background every time I played it, which for me is the worst thing a record can do. It either has to stand out or have the courage to be terrible, which neither this one has.
Well, that's all well and good, Foul Quince. What's happening in the world of Krautrock?
That's all well and good, Foul Quince, I hear you say. But what's happening in the world of Krautrock? Well, Edgar Froese is what's happening. Edgar was the only full-time member of Tangerine Dream, playing with them from the foundation of the band to his death in 2015. Which begs the question why this excellent double album, Ages, was necessary, because it would have fit in perfectly well with Tangy D's wonderful run of 8 brilliant albums in a row from 1970 to 76, or it certainly would have extended it. Ages is a really absorbent record. It takes you in and you take it in. It has long hypnotic stretches that still feel like they move, and there are some of those traces of quirky musical humour that really came to flower on his next album, Stuntman. Fans of classic TD would approve. Here's a bit of an odd bod from that murky valley where prog and krautrock intersect. A few months back I bought an album by a band called Triumvirat, which Dan on Dan's Mini Album Reviews had recommended and thought I might like, and I did like it, and I showed it here, featuring it as a pleasant prog-influenced slice of krautrock. So here's another album of theirs I saw called Old Loves Die Hard. This one I would describe as prog influenced by krautrock, and quite pleasant. In fact, I describe it as more than pleasant. I actually found it engaging. This is a band I'm going to look out for in the future because I like good tune, and these guys are a lot more tuneful than your average krautrock band, and probably even more so than your average prog band for that matter. Now, check this out. What does $5 get you from the smouldering wreckage of the Albanese economy? My soul brothers and soul sisters, it gets you this, top of the Stax. This was in the $5 take your pick bin. A compilation of 20, count 'em 20, great hits from Stax record way on down in Memphis. There's the usual classic slammers, Hold On I'm Coming, B.A.B.Y., Mr. Big Stuff, Green Onions, Dock of the Bay, the theme from Shaft, but it's the little fish that make it sweet. Things such as Johnny Taylor's Cheaper to Keep Up or Who's Making Love, Push and Pull from Rufus Thomas, I'll Be the Other Woman by the Soul Children, Mel and Tim Starting All Over Again, that make this fantastic. And even with 20 songs, they're all the full versions and they all sound amazing and dynamic. Oh yeah. Okay, snap test, no Googling, what's the best Aretha Franklin album? Pens down, it's Aretha now. I say that because this does have the big hits like Think and I Say a Little Prayer for You and Seesaw to lead it off. But it's side 2, which is 5 straight soul classics that are a professional grade, mind-blowing experience. None of them are big name hits, but every one of them packs a heck of a punch. This one came out hot on the heels of her other 10 out of 10 album for 1968, Lady Soul. It had Chain of Fools, A Natural Woman and Ain't No Way on it, but I reckon this one just shades it. But I think you should buy both of them, just so you can find out why Aretha Franklin is, was and always will be the undisputed and indisputable Queen of Soul. Finishing up with a couple of oddities. I found this one at the markets at Petrie. At first glance, if I hold it far enough away from the camera and jiggle it about a little bit, putting it in and out of focus maybe, it's a US copy of the Bee Gees' third album, Idea. And indeed it is. The record is lovely. It's a great record. It's in terrific condition and it's got one of Barry Gibbs's best ever songs on it called Kilburn Towers. Kilburn Towers is important because in 1966 it was Australia's most stylish and prestigious address. It's a tower block on the northern beaches of Sydney at Manly. And Barry and his brothers used to live in Cogra, which is in the somewhat depressing southern region of Sydney. Barry on the weekends would go all the way out to Manly to gaze at Kilburn Towers, get stoned, and dream about being rich enough to live there one day. And guess what? Barry's dream came true. Back to this monstrous curiosity. It is, on closer inspection, not a copy of the Bee Gees' Idea album. It's actually a photocopy stuck on front and back of a copy of, I don't know if I can get this close enough for you. Can you see that there? acdc's Back in Black album. So somewhere there's a homeless copy of Back in Black lying around in its polyurethane underwear, while this monstrosity with its bodged up front cover and back cover shot goes around free. You can see, by the way, on the back, if I lift that, the Bee Gees were still 5-piece then. Vincent Collins was still in the band. It's a terrific little record, Idea. They were really at their peak when they made this one. And I thought the vendor made no attempt to disguise what it was. He comprehensively explained the nature of the record on post-it notes all over it, and it was a very low price. And I thought, I'm going to buy it and get an album that I really like in great condition, the spine's falling off there, and get a story to tell on a VC video as well. So why not? Does anybody else out there have any bodgy homemade covers framing their otherwise authentic records? As if that wasn't weird enough for you, now it's going to get really weird. Last but far from least, I've shared with you all before my love of 1970s Australian as seen on TV compilation albums from KTEL, Festival, etc. Well, for me, the granddaddy of all of these albums is 1976's Rocker, an EMI compilation of songs mainly from the Albert Records label. A weird little beast from 1976.
Why is it so weird?
Why is it so weird, you ask? I'm glad you did. Where to start with this? First up, it's not conventionally sequenced. It's continually sequenced, like it would be for radio play. It's even got little ads and jingles stuck in the middle between the songs. Secondly, I said mainly Albert's Records because for some inexplicable reason, stuck in the middle of side 2 is Every Day of My Life by the Little River Band. Thirdly, there was a cinematic mini-movie released with this, which featured a fresh-faced young band called the Angels taking on some music-hating supervillain. Aussie fans will know this movie rather inadvertently because of the only 2 pieces of film that survive from it, a clip of the Ted Mulry gang playing Jump in My Car on a pontoon in the middle of Sydney Harbour, which is something of an Australian classical icon, and a clip of John Paul Young wearing a sailor suit singing his great hit I Hate the Music. The Angels played out over the closing credits with Am I Ever Going to See Your Face Again, but it is unrecorded as to whether or not cinematic audiences responded with No Way, Get Fucked, Fuck Off after the titular question was posed in the chorus, which is the most Australian thing in the world to do. Fourthly, and I have to put this down at this point, it was accompanied by a book, the Rocker Book, for the princely sum of $2.50, which was full of quizzes, puzzles, games, photos, and most importantly, the sheet music to every song on the album. So let's see if this sheet music really works. See if I can find a song that we all know. The album has like 4 acdc songs on it, 2 of which are pretty good, 2 of which not so good. Got a couple from Ted Mullery, got a couple from John Paul Young, got a couple from Stevie Wright, including his #1 hit Evie, with a ferocious guitar solo from, of all people, Malcolm Young. It's also got a couple of songs from George Young and Harry Vander's side project, the Marcus Roll Band. One, as I said, inexplicably from LRB, and the Easy Beats. So let's just see if I can find one we'd all know. Here's one we'll all know. So let's set this up here. Take up the ukulele. Can confirm it is in the key that it was recorded on, but that's not a great key to play on the ukulele, so I'm going to move this to D major. Seems legit. In any case, that brings us to the end of our little presentation, and all that's left to say is until the next time that we meet again in good company, may all your picks be fantastic and may your skips be few.